Welcome to Adventures Back to Scholars and Skeletons. This is going to be the top 5 tips for becoming a DM. It's going to be more of a recent DM, so I have a few things for those who are just starting off in Dungeons & Dragons, specifically 5th edition, but this certainly works with any edition of Dungeons & Dragons that you're working with now. My first tip is to always keep a binder of information that you have for your story kept. In a couple of these pages, I actually have the entire story written out for our podcast, up until our most recent episodes, and from there I can go and base my story off more clearly, so that way I make sure I'm hitting all of those plot holes and my characters aren't confused along the way. Also, when we come to meet up for our sessions, we know exactly what we're talking about and where we have to go from there, so that way things aren't misconstrued or we don't lose any information along the way. Now, tip number 2 is I definitely recommend keeping a few different types and sets of die behind your DM screen. I right now actually have an all-metal set of dice that I keep, just for good luck. It was one of my first sets when I became a DM, and then actually one of my first sets that I got when just getting into D&D in general, I keep both behind the screen because sometimes when we're rolling things like Wild Magic on the podcast, I need multiple dice in order to look at the tables or to roll for damage. So it's just nice having those extra dice behind the screen, so that way when the damage is needed, I can roll it myself. Now, another tip that I'd like to hit on is to always get your DM information from other DMs. A good DM makes up his own ideas, but a great DM steals from others. Now, one thing that I do get a lot of information from is the Adventure Zone. They're a great podcast, but they also have some pretty amazing books and information that you can actually read up on when it comes to D&D. You can also get your inspirations from movies like Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter, or whatever type of role-playing style game that you are actually going off of. Now, my last tip, I believe, or tip number 4, is actually going to be to keep some extra books behind your DM screen, because you never know when your characters are going to run up on something that you're certainly not planning in that certain session. And some books that I would definitely recommend are Table Fables, of which I found on Amazon that I just got. And in both books, Table Fables 1 and 2, the first book actually goes off of the collection of tables for game masters that don't really know what they're doing and need help figuring out where they're going along the way. And then the second book is actually a world builder's book. When you don't know where your character is going to be heading, and you actually need information for the background, for foliage, for trees, for mountains, things like that, you actually get some pretty good information and adjectives from this book that I definitely use during some of our podcasts and when I DM personally. Now, just because I don't know if I hit on my last tip, I would definitely recommend getting all of the extra D&D books that you possibly can. I have almost all of them that you can get that are specifically for either players or DMs themselves. Right here I have Volo's Guides to Monsters. This not only has some homebrew characters in it, but also some really good monsters that aren't shown in the Monsters Manual. I also have things like Xanthar's Guide to Everything. This helps out with weapons, magic, extra class perks that you can get along the way, and of course the typical books like the Monster Manual or the Player Handbook, along with the Dungeon Master Guide. Now, if you want to get crazy and you feel like you're not as creative as you possibly could be when you're becoming a DM, or you're just starting off on a DM, I definitely recommend picking up some books that have their own storyline to that. And specifically, I mean books like this that Dungeons & Dragons make. This is Tomb of Annihilation, one of the hardest campaigns that you can run, and it's one that I run personally at home, but in case you ever get stuck on where to write your story or how to continue, the books made by specifically Wizards of the Coast are always great books to pick up that you can definitely find either at your local Walmart or even at local game stores near you. Now, hopefully you guys enjoyed these tips. We have more on the way coming in case you want to learn how to be a DM, but also check out some of our other videos, like our podcast that you can find on scholarsandskeletons.podbean.com, iTunes, some Spotify, Google Play, and a bunch of other places. At the same time, check out our YouTube channel, the rest of our videos that we actually have up. We have things like speed drawings with Seth, who is aka Havoc, or some more tips along the way. Either way, be wary, travelers, as you go out there and traverse the world by yourself.